ਕਿਵੇਂ ਮੁਖੜੇ ਤੋਂ ਨਜ਼ਰਾਂ ਹਟਾਵਾਂ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਮੁਖੜੇ ਤੋਂ
In a distant galaxy, far from the known reaches of humankind, an exoplanet called Nithra thrived under the rule of its ancient civilizations. For millennia, its inhabitants lived in harmony with their world, guided by principles that valued structure, tradition, and collective strength. The Nitharans had built great empires based on these ancient ways, surviving countless generations with their societies intact until an alien race arrived, an advanced and enigmatic species known only as the Tran.
The Tran had been traveling the stars for eons, far longer than the Nitharans had even existed. They were a species with extraordinary longevity, capable of living for thousands of years, and had amassed a wealth of knowledge that spanned countless civilizations and worlds. Though they had watched many planets from afar, studying and observing, they rarely intervened. But Nithra intrigued them. Living in vast, bunker-like structures deep beneath the surface of desolate moons and remote asteroids, the Tran had long hidden from the other races in the galaxy. Their subterranean fortresses were filled with ancient treasures, food stores, and the precious resources of entire planets, but their greatest wealth was the knowledge they had accumulated. They understood the deepest truths about societal control, the manipulation of ideas, and how the slightest shift in worldview could lead to the rise or fall of empires. For centuries, the Tran had watched Nithra's civilizations grow, prosper, and adhere to their conservative traditions. However, the Tran had their own plans. They believed that their worldview, one of absolute personal freedom and liberation from the constraints of tradition, was the ultimate evolutionary step for any intelligent race. In their eyes, the Nitharans were bound by outdated systems, stifling their potential. One day, the Tran emerged from their hidden lairs, descending upon Nithra's eastern hemisphere with the promise of a new way of life. They presented themselves as liberators, offering enlightened ideas that catered especially to those who felt oppressed under Nithra's rigid social systems, women, the underclass, and those who desired a life of unbridled freedom. The Tran's philosophy was simple but powerful: the freedom to live without restriction, to pursue desires without judgment, and to cast off the old traditions that had ruled Nitharan society for centuries. They promised a life of fulfillment and endless possibilities, free from the shackles of morality and conservative customs. At first, the ruling powers of Nithra were wary, but the allure of the Tran's ideas proved too strong. The younger generation embraced these promises eagerly, and soon, the Tran's worldview began to spread like wildfire. The ancient laws and traditions that had long kept Nithra's societies stable were cast aside. The family unit, once the cornerstone of Nitharan life, was weakened. Moral codes were discarded as relics of a bygone era. The Tran's ideas spread to every corner of the planet, and one by one, the old civilizations of Nithra fell. The promise of freedom and indulgence became more enticing than the discipline and structure that had held their societies together for so long. Yet as the new worldview took hold, something darker began to emerge. The people of Nithra, who had once lived in peaceful unity, now found themselves fragmented and lost. The very freedom they had embraced left them without direction, adrift in a sea of disconnection. As the bonds of tradition unraveled, so did the collective strength that had once defined their civilizations. What had been promised as liberation now seemed more like chaos, as the once great empires of Nithra descended into instability. Soon, the Nitharans realized that the Tran's ideas, while alluring, had stripped them of their ability to resist. Their society, now addicted to indulgence and self-interest, could no longer muster the will to reclaim its former strength. The traditional values that had once bound them together were gone, and with them, the moral and societal framework that had sustained them for generations. The people of Nithra began to see the truth too late. The Tran's worldview had destabilized their world beyond repair. Yet even as they recognized the problem, they could not return to the old ways. The new system was too deeply ingrained, and those who had grown up in the world of absolute freedom could not imagine going back to a more restrictive life. Now, the Nitharans lingered in a kind of spiritual and societal darkness, unable to return to the structured world they had once known, yet unsatisfied with the chaotic freedom they had embraced. They were trapped, waiting for a solution that seemed increasingly unlikely to come. The Tran, watching from their underground citadels on distant moons, observed the planet with cold detachment. They had seen this pattern play out on countless worlds before, but they had no intention of intervening. For the Tran, the Nithrans were just another experiment, a civilization that had been tested and found wanting. As the people of Nithra drifted, awaiting a savior, they began to realize the bitter truth. The Tran had offered them not enlightenment, but a subtle form of enslavement. The freedom they had been given was a hollow one, for without the strength of tradition and morality, they had lost the very essence of what made them strong. Now they waited in the shadows, hoping for a miracle, yet knowing that their salvation might never come.